Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. All right, everybody, listeners, people on the podcast, and by people, I mean the same people that are always on the podcast, but listeners as well. I want you to take a drink of water. Everybody take a second to hydrate, all right? We're going into spring. We need to be hydrated.
You are pushing the hydration.
I'm pushing the hydration, all right? I'm gonna do it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I don't care. I know it's a podcast. We're all collectively drinking some water. Very good. I'm very proud of all of you.
Good.
You are basically just a plant, and you need some water and some sunshine. So let's.
What kind of plant are we? What kind of plant are we?
I don't know. What kind of plant are you?
Industry plant, maybe.
How about what kind of plant are you today as we sit here? What kind of plant are you as you sit here right now? What kind of plant? Because, we change over time. We can be different plants.
Sure. Today, the vibe is... I'm going to go with Echinops, which is blue globe thistle, if you are not familiar with that. And it is exactly as it sounds. It is blue, it is round, and it is prickly, and that is how I feel. But it's really pretty, so...
Okay. That's a whole vibe.
That's my vibe.
Yeah, okay.
So I am today. Anybody
Jessica,
else?
What are you feeling?
I don't even know what I am feeling.
So if you don't know what you're feeling, are you like a pothos then?
I guess so. I don't even know. I'm the mother of millions, right? What is that plant called?
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Mother of millions. Yeah, the succulent. Mm-hmm.
There we go. That is currently what I am.
Just little babies dropping off of you everywhere.
Not knowing you did very well there. That seems like you just might have nailed something.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good on the fly. Brett, what are you feeling?
I feel like a daffodil that came out a little too early.
Oh,
under threat.
Just
a little anxious.
The conditions don't feel optimal for my overall well-being at the moment. But this is a transitory thing that ultimately can maybe get fixed by the passage of time.
That's very existential. I kind of like it.
Warmer temperatures on the way.
I like it. Yeah.
Warmer temperatures are on the way. Hopefully a little less brutal wind and heavy rains, just a little bit more moderation, a little bit chiller vibes in a variety of ways. Yeah.
Good deal.
How about you, Ray?
I would say oxalis. I can be pleasant, but I'm feeling a little spicy. So, yeah. I've got a little tang to me, so maybe oxalis today. I'm just background green. I'm background green on the ground right now, but
oxalis in the greenhouse industry is either a plant that you grow on purpose and you sell it for, as shamrocks for St. Patrick's Day, or it is a horrible greenhouse weed. Yes, a horrible greenhouse weed.
The bane of your existence, yes. Well, I could be either. I could be sort of ornamental on some days, but I could be the bane of existence on others.
Don't they have the little seed pods that explode?
They can, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you and your exploding seed pods?
Yes, that is Ray, the spicy. I'm bringing the spice. So
Ray started as a feature, but now he's become a problem.
Yeah. I was a solution, but now I'm the problem. Yes. I like that, Brad. Some days that is me. That's a pretty fair descriptor. So yeah.
I feel like that feeds very well into what we're talking about today, which is how our personality types feed or influence maybe our garden style, right? That's sort of the jam we're talking about. Yes.
That's correct.
Which I think all of us are very different, but I wonder how similar our gardens would be.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess the real question is how we see ourselves versus how we actually express ourselves, which, when we do surveys, you have to ask what people think, but then you have to follow up later in the survey with what they actually do.
Uh-huh.
So I guess we have to start with how we see ourselves, or if we've used any instruments to gauge ourselves or check into our personalities. Maybe that's a good place to start. Have you guys done anything like that? Like,
yes.
I know there's lots of personality profiler things, or we talk about it in group settings and organizational settings, and there's all these tools and assessments. So I thought that maybe you guys had done some of those.
Yeah, I just did a really in-depth one with UK and my office. It's the DISC assessment, the communication and behavioral strengths self-report. So I have like a
What does the D stand for?
In DISC,
Destruction. No, I'm just kidding.
dominance,
Oh.
influence, steadiness, and like being consistent. Consistency.
Did it give you any basic insights into kind of how it kind of categorized?
It did. It was really cool. It's 35 pages long.
Oh wow, that is some content there.
It is some content. It was actually pretty cool. It gives you your natural style and your work style. So how you act more, at work versus at home. So like on mine, I am more of a steady person at the office. And then I'm also a, what was the I? What did I say that one was? Influence, like people person, way more at the office versus it's kind of flipped at home life. And like I'm more dominant at home than I am at the office and more consistent at home in my natural style.
Wow.
But it kind of like makes sense that, in our jobs and extension, we suddenly have to get in front of a lot of people and talk to a lot of people. So it kind of like my job has made it where I am more of like that influence, high on my thing.
Are you ever like the same thing at home and work? Some people are.
Some people were pretty close. Some of them
They're
were
dominant everywhere, or they're non.
Yes.
Okay.
And some of them were completely opposite with my coworkers. Like mine are still like my dominant was still low on both of them, but it was like a little higher for at home.
I gotcha.
But those three, the I, S, and C, were all pretty close together. They just flipped a little bit at home life.
Is the implication that the home natural one is sort of like who you fundamentally are, and then the work one is who you become in a work environment, or is it kind of
so? Yeah,
okay.
It's like you've like adapted, right? Like what you have to adapt to, which makes sense that I'm more outgoing for work.
If you have a lot of conflicts,
right?
Maybe you haven't adapted.
Maybe I have not.
No, not you specifically. Maybe one has not. Stop dominating.
Gosh, Jessica.
This interaction, Jessica.
Yeah.
So
you're using the DISC.
You have gained some insight through DISC.
Yeah, it also tells you like the best ways that you work with people or how people like what you don't work well with. It has like a whole page of like don't say these things to Jessica because it literally says
I would love to get a hold of that list.
Oh man, trigger points,
right? Or do say these things, these type of encouragements if you want like my most productivity.
That
sounds pretty
really
cool.
Nice. So do you have like, is it like there's a type that you have, like you're like a number or a thing, or is it just more of a profile across these variables?
It's a profile across these variables, but it will like break it down. It's like I'm a high SI. Like that's what like for this type of test that I am.
So out of the discs, out of the DISC, you're high in S and I.
I'm high in pace and people, basically, it says. And then they also like color coordinate it as well. And the instructor was good. And I've shared this with some of you all. Like he gave examples of like different movie characters to like really hit it home. And so like he did Star Wars and your I person was like Han Solo, your C person who's like, that consistent rule follower was like C-3PO. The S like I was Luke Skywalker. And then you can imagine who the dominant one was. Well, you got Darth Vader.
He is the Darth.
So, and then he gave other movie examples.
I mean,
it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So as you think about, and maybe we can give some feedback too, as you think about those lessons you learned through that thing, how would you say you see that in your approach to plants or gardening or even, operating some of the plant business stuff? What do you see any of that in there?
So I like on mine, it says for like my natural style is to be that more consistent, like follow rules, decision kind of thing. And that makes sense because with vegetable production wise, I like having a list of those varieties. I like I want to know where things are out in the field, have that map laid out, that plan of stuff, and having all that organized. Now with my flower beds at home, it kind of flips a little. Like I do like having like masses of color together, having some, some design, but I am not a like designer. I would say I'm more of that. Let's try to do the cottage, garden
Ooh, this is
style.
pretty. Ooh, this is pretty.
Let's try to put this together. But definitely with the vegetable side of things and fruit production,
business side.
I want to make it more
orderly.
Yeah. So I can see that with the personality traits.
Are there
and I feel like
that,
Alexis would be very similar to that one because I just know.
Are there any you feel like there's any aspects of your personality or approach that you looking back now, thinking more about yourself and growing across time, you're like, oh yeah, I do struggle with that thing and have had to kind of adapt and change in order to be better. Like some people would be bad with record keeping, or they're more scatterbrained, or some people would be more bad with being able to let go of control when there's a crazy year or something like that. Are there things in your personality assessment that you feel like you've had to adapt somewhat?
Yeah. When I think about like farm business wise with changes over the years from how we first started managing everything to now, and then very fortunate, work with my like in-laws through this business, and then my husband, and how they approach things. Their personality is very different from how I would approach things, and being able to manage that. Cause I was thinking of examples as I was going through this training about how my husband at home is more of that influence person, like instantly called me and was like, hey, we should do this. We could add this. We can do this. And then I, in return, I was like, okay, that sounds great. But how much is that going to cost? Where are we going to put it? Who's going to do this? And I mean, it works in the end, but just, over time realizing how to work with those other, to make it work as a whole, because they can all work together, right? All the personalities fit together and can work, even if they are extremely opposite. So
my mom used to say growing up that my dad was the dreamer and she was the doer. And so he would come up with the great ideas and she'd figure out ways to get them done. And they worked together to get them done. But she always said, like, oh, your dad's, he's such a dreamer.
Right.
So Alexis, are you more of a dreamer or a doer or something else? What was your reference point for understanding thyself?
Well, Brett convinced me I needed to know my Enneagram type. And I was like, all right, let's figure that out. And it hit so close to home. I actually was rereading it, and it nailed it, right? So I'm a 1. For those of you out there who know your Enneagram types, I am a 1, which is known as the reformer, but I'm a critical perfectionist. Everyone here is shocked. I'm very mission oriented. I'm very practical in things. I feel like I have to justify everything that I do, which is all tracking. So I tend to think I am logical, but really I'm just looking for reasons to like rationalize what I already want to do.
Justification.
Yeah. So
I think one of the interesting, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and I think one of the interesting things that came up was if there's the option of like, we're going to overthink this almost, we want coming up with a plan is coming up with a plan, and that's great. But if it comes down to let's overthink this or let's just do it, and are you more likely to be the person who's saying we've thought through it, we said things, let's just do it, we don't need to talk through it yet again, or are you more likely to be the person who's going to overthink?
Yeah, I feel like I told you one thing, but the more I actually looked at my actions for it, I do want to think about it. I do want to make a plan, but then it's done and I'm going to go do it. And
that's what you said. That's what you said before.
Is that what I said? Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I told you I was going to overthink it. I get a little, I married an engineer. So he is a big planner, and which is great most of the time. But yeah, I'm the one pulling out the, drill or the chainsaw. And I'm like, okay, let's just go. Like, we got to do it. We got to do it. We got to take the step now.
Yeah. So you find yourself saying, let's go, let's do it. And he finds himself sometimes saying, can we just talk this through real quick?
One more time.
Make sure. Yeah, that's funny.
Yes.
Any other kind of ways that you see that stuff playing out in your
I think people, I think, often are confused on why someone who likes a lot of order would want to, grow things and work with nature. And, Jessica probably can attest to this as well, but it's nice because we can have lots of straight lines. We can have plans. We can have, sections, beautiful, in my case, swaths of color. And so you do have the opportunity to make plans, but a lot of the time you have to twist on the fly, right? Because hailstorm comes in or the ground's too wet. And so nature kind of gives me an opportunity to quickly change course. And I have a reason for doing that that's not myself, because I can't let myself be the problem, right? But Mother Nature is the problem. And so I'm like, well, that's just what she gave me. And so I can roll with it. And that has been, I think that's what keeps it exciting and fun, and why we plan every year. And while we say, well, there's always next year, there's always next season when we grow things. So I don't know. That's sort of like my garden style. I like to have like very pristine lines, but man, if I've got extra plugs of something, I'm throwing them in everywhere.
So do you, and this is for you, Jessica, as well, would you be more likely, do you think, and just to say the quiet part out loud about this episode, we're sort of trying to let you know a little bit more about us, but also there's many, many different ways to approach plants and gardening and thinking about stuff, and know thyself as a starting point to then be able to either embrace that and go with that or correct it. Would you be more likely to reach, you sort of start all your plants, you get to June or July, and would you be more likely to have the experience of, man, I started way too much stuff, or I put I bit off way more than I can chew, or man, I really wish that I had planted even more than what I did, but I was kind of cautious, or somewhere in between?
I'm probably going to plant. We're probably going to start more than me, because I'm going to think, well, what if something happens and they don't all make it? Or what if, right? Like, what if we break a bunch while we're transplanting them or whatever? And we can find a spot for them, right?
Sure.
Or just
we can find a spot for them.
We can
find a spot for them. There. We can sell, we can sell them at the market. We can, or my husband brought me home 2 flats of marigolds last year. Did I need 2 flats of marigolds? Not really.
A lot of marigolds.
But we just put marigolds everywhere. We had marigolds everywhere last year, and we just made it work. And, but I think I would always do more. Maybe that's mine and Sean's downfall about that.
What about
like brought home 12 chicks the other night, so we don't need.
What about variety?
Chickens.
Like, do you feel like you accidentally do too much variety of stuff, like too many different varieties of stuff?
That's a good example of how we've grown over the years, right? Because we used to do so many varieties of tomatoes, and now we've like really narrowed it down to ones that we know do really well, what sells at the market, ones that are going to produce well, and we still like maybe add in 1 or 2 like new ones to try, but we don't have like 20 varieties anymore. We're down to like 10 varieties that we know are going to work for us. So
what
that
happened
is something.
When you had too many? What happened that made you change?
Sometimes labels not being right out in the field, not exactly knowing what we had, being really disappointed in some that like we purchased a lot that were supposed to be good, and then they ended up being duds, and just making it easier to manage. Like we've reached our point where we know, like we can't really expand anymore unless we're willing to leave our current adult jobs, right? Like we've reached that point of management in our system, and it took a few years of growing pains and just figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and maybe we don't need to spend so much on something. I mean, and every year there's at least one thing that he's like, we're going to grow this year. It's popcorn this year. We'll see how that goes. So
I feel like this
enthusiasm.
I feel like this perfectly fits in. I just gave a talk on growing for your market. And so I was talking about a bunch of different types of flower markets that you could be in. And it was like talking about quantities to grow, how many different things should you grow, colors you should grow, all these kinds of things. And it like the biggest thing I told people was grow your workhorses. So, hope if you've got experience, then, what works for you, what you can sell, the main things, but then experiment with one or two different things every year. And that's what keeps it fresh. And like, that's something that I do where I make things justify the space and time that I put into them, but I also want like to be excited about growing something new and trying something out, even if I know it might suck. Or like I grow pansies, which are not great cut flowers in the grand scheme of things, but there's something like special and cool. And I'm like, look at the little ones, So
which is there one of those two viewpoints that you said sort of play to your workhorses versus have something exciting for yourself? Mm-hmm. Is there one of those that comes more naturally to you and one of them that you have to kind of know and manage through experience that I need to focus more on this? Or is it, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I feel like they equally, I like the order of it, but I like something that is going to be fresh, right? And I'm always wanting to, what's the new thing that's going to get people excited?
Have you always done both, or did one of those get added more recently than the other?
No, I have always done both.
Because I could imagine somebody, and this is again, what type of gardener are you? Yep. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to go in and make this just an efficient production system with the things that are most profitable, and it's going to be a hellscape that I am no way enjoy spending time in. It's so
right.
Yeah.
Or someone who's like, let's just vibe up,
We're gonna
whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
That always makes it fun. It's like we always try something new like that. Like we've always done that, but like I said, like just scaled it back some with what we're doing. But like I just was telling somebody yesterday about how one year my husband got so excited because he was going to grow red, white, and blue potatoes. And we did. And he thought for sure that they were just going to like month of July. Oh, they were going to fly. Nobody wanted our blue potatoes. No, but we ate so many blue potatoes.
Brown mashed potatoes.
Yeah, he had his like little red, white, and blue container of potatoes to sell at the market, and they just did not move. Right.
I love that. I would have done the same thing. I'd been like, these are going to fly off the shelf.
Yeah.
These are going to be amazing.
So excited. So.
What about you, Ray? You had a different or what was your tool or mechanism for knowing thyself, and what did you learn?
Over time, I we've done different things. I guess Alexis and Jessica have talked about two tools. Well, a tool that I've used as far as personality profiles go is one that's I guess pretty well known, or was pretty well known. Myers-Briggs assessment. I've had that a couple of times, and both times I guess I've been pretty close on what I came out as, which was ENFJ, and I won't go into a lot of details about that, but that basically stands for, and I try to translate that to gardening, it's introvert or extrovert, and of course I was an extrovert. Big shocker to those that know me. I tend to be kind of introverted at home, but at work, I'm a functional extrovert, and the N was intuition, which in a garden, that kind of translates to experimenting and designing, which kind of makes sense. I did a little, I'm not a landscape designer, but I did commercial landscape designs before I came into extension through a commercial organization. And it was pretty interesting. Design install, which, you learn a lot about people because you almost have to approach it as an investigator, what they think they want, what they actually want. But it was a real learning opportunity. But that was my N being intuition is what it stands for. So that's the experimental side. F is feeling, which in a garden, that means I connect, I guess, to emotion more than I do just code logic. That's the way I connect to people, and that's the way I view the world. And let's see, E, N, F, and J is judging, which is I approach things with a kind of a structured approach. That's what it would translate into the garden. The flip side of that would be perceiving. That's the flexible, go as you kind of go with the flow sort of approach. So ENFJ, and I was trying to think how that related to my gardening, both in my former professional activities and then kind of how I garden at home. But I'm sort of all over the place. As an extrovert, I don't do a lot of extroverted stuff at home in my garden because it's all personal gardening. And part of that is just the way that our lot's laid out. I don't have anything much out in front besides just landscaping. In the back is where my wife, she has, a nice cut flower garden which grows every year and takes up my vegetable space. Thank you very much. But as far as just the way I want things to look in back, it's interesting when I started thinking about this because I do like everything to have boundaries that it's a landscape bed. Talking more about landscaping, it doesn't matter if it's flowers or vegetables. I want it to look like it's intentional, but there's no straight lines in anything that I do. I'm very much a curvilinear designer, no straight lines. And when I prune plants, I like natural form habit versus rigid shearing. And that kind of played into my personality. But as far as the plants that go inside of the gardening, I like for them to have a purpose. Just me personally. Like, I mean, tomatoes can be pretty, people. Lettuce can be pretty. Things that
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, it can be fun and functional, and that's the type of gardener I am.
Edible landscaping.
Yes, I love the edible landscaping stuff. So the more I started thinking about this, I'm like, how in the world am I going to translate this in? But you really kind of can. And so that went along with the kind of the feeling section, I think, is I wanted to be functional, but I also wanted to feel good about the garden, like you said earlier, Brett. So yeah, I want it to look like a landscape bed, but at the same time, my favorite type of garden is a cottage garden. But I want that cottage garden to have nice borders, nice edging around it, so you can tell it's a landscape bed, but it can be a ride of color on the inside.
Yes, I love
I
that.
love that. But and I'm also one of those gardeners that I realize the hardest thing to accomplish in landscapes, and it's deceptive, is simplicity. So I always err on the side of simplicity as far as adding elements and colors if it's more of a aesthetic landscape. I will establish a landscape planting and then hang everything off of a structure. So I do approach my gardening activities as far as landscapes in a very structured manner. You apply all the principles of design, space, element, scale, all of that stuff. You apply that, but the garden out back, it's a ride of color. It's a different story because it's for us. And my wife is involved with that, and she is more on the artistic side of things. So she loves just everything that looks like a 70s rock concert. She loves the color and the noise, and I'm good with that too. So I guess I'm a little bit here and a little bit there all over the scale, but I am a community gardener. I do love the community type. I'm an extrovert, so I do love plant swaps and things like that. But I also enjoy my time in the back of the garden that's away from people, that I'll go have a cup of coffee, sit and look at the, geraniums or whatever. Yeah.
I think that's really common for us in our field, as I've known you all for a while, and I've known, a couple of other extension agents, because we get so just kind of like how my personality thinks. It's like I'm more extroverted in my job, right, than at home. And I see that across with a lot of people in extension, because we are extroverts at work a lot of times. And so then when we're like more introverted when in our home lives,
don't
and even with our even with our gardening,
my batteries to recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't call. The answer is no.
I often in the spring just get peopled out. Like great people interactions, like a fantastic day at work, but then time you come home, I'm just like, I'm done peopling. I can't people
chocolate
anymore.
cake is delicious, but if you have too much of it, you start feeling bad.
Do you?
Eventually your health is going to suffer.
Well, I mean, I would be happy to have a cake off with you, and we'll just see who regrets it first.
Yeah, who regrets it first?
I would do that. Who's going to have a peach off with you? Yeah.
So, Ray, do you think you're more, like kind of the question earlier, do you think you're more likely to bite off more than you can chew, or you're more likely to say, man, I kind of wish I had put out more?
No, I kind of am a planner as far as structure goes. I try not to put out, because I'm thinking of one thing at home. How hot is it going to be in July? For me personally, I'm always a planner. I want to know how much water it's going to take to automatically water that stuff to keep it alive, so I don't have to worry about it. So I kind of try to hit the mark. I reflect on what I've did the previous year and what worked well, and apply that to the next year. So in that manner, I'm pretty structured. So I try to I err on the side of, once again, simplicity and a little bit too less than a little bit too much. So, yeah.
So what he's saying is he's never wrong about it, Brett.
Oh,
Yeah,
not
they were wrong.
according to my wife, who wants
Everything was
more
the plan.
flowers all the time. More flowers, all the flowers.
Have you all done the Myers-Briggs before? Do you happen to remember any of your?
I have done it, but I do not remember. I don't remember what I was, though. It's been several years.
Yeah. I know mine was that I was actually more introverted than extroverted, and that shocked everybody. But that could just be how I was feeling that day when I took the test.
Actually, you've got all these tools, these nice AI tools. And so I was like, well, can I translate this over using a rubric? And I did, ENFJ. And it says my ideal gardens based on my Myers-Briggs topology is cottage gardens, no shocker, bursting with life and color and a mix of flowers and edibles, which kind of
Love
describes
it.
the
Super
situation.
cool.
Wildlife-friendly gardens, love that. Something to attract things like birds, bees, butterflies. We do have a little pollinator garden at the very end down next to Elkhorn Creek where we live. Let's see, shared community gardens. I don't do that personally, but now at work, I'm all about that. Love those things. And therapy gardens, which I work with a couple of those at work on a regular basis, so that kind of makes sense. Peaceful corners with, plants that, can be used for a variety of purposes. But
the idea of community gardens I think they are a beautiful idea, but I would lose my mind personally. So
agreed.
I can see you winding up.
If I had to argue with somebody about what is in my garden bed, I would freak out.
I cannot imagine
everybody has their own plot. Yeah. Nobody touches anybody's plot.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, Brett,
what about you?
Yeah, Brett, I know everybody's like, Brett,
seeing your beautiful backyard area with all these very interesting elements to your landscape, not only the front but the back. I'm very interested in your insights into your own gardening activities.
Well, so Alexis
it's to show off.
Yeah. Alexis mentioned, how dare you, first of all.
First of all, drop off a cliff.
I told you that in confidence, and the whole podcast knows about it. So my vantage point is through the Enneagram, which I think is a really interesting, helpful way of understanding the world, understanding other people and yourself as far as your motivations to do things. And it's pretty common, I think, that when people find out what number they are, they don't like it. Like they're kind of like Alexis's comment about like too accurate, or it really shines light on things about yourself that maybe you don't necessarily like, or you may have even worked to change or mitigate. But one of the things that I am a type 3 Enneagram. And one of the things about that type is that they like to be found impressive. They like for the things that they do to be impressive to people.
Nailed it.
And we all smiled at what
we all smiled because we were like, his backyard, nailed it.
But I happen to be married to a person who is significantly more chaotic in her approach to wildflowers and gardening.
Thank you.
And so I think that there's a tension there that plays out in our yard, and you can actually listen to our we did a mini episode maybe a month or two ago where Annie and I talk about the development of our garden across time. But even as I think back, so we had like a little mini horticulture system there with drip tape and header lines and all that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? When you come over and look at it, that's really impressive. That's really cool. That's really interesting, intriguing, whatever. And it doesn't have to be just like impressive in a like self-aggrandizing way, but just like, wow, that's something I haven't seen before. And then as we developed stuff further, it was like a little bit more of a hardscaping and some contouring and stones and stuff like that. Wow. And it feels like kind of like a park back there. And then on top of that, I've added in all the bonsai stuff, which is, it's like an art form where you're growing things and cultivating them specifically for the way that they appear to people. So I think that's one way of understanding how and why I approach things the way that I have. But another side of this is that for most of my life, I have had like clinical major depression and anxiety disorders. And I realized a couple of years ago when we were in the middle of a global pandemic, which turns out big trigger for major depressive and anxiety disorders. I would go, and this is before we did some of our more intensive landscape changes. I would just go and kind of sit outside and hang out there. And I felt just a little bit better. It was kind of one of the first times that I, wasn't distracting myself. I was just sitting there listening, feeling, hearing, looking, and started thinking, man, it would be really like cool if this space that we have here was more of a like retreat or refuge or whatever. And so that also informs, like, I that's the vision for what I want it to be. I want it to be like a little mini park with some landscaping and some visually interesting things. That's like for me, what I need from it, what I've realized about myself, is this quiet space, this quiet refuge place to kind of hang out. But then when we do it, I want to do it at the top level so that it's really cool looking and really impressive. And there's a big, Japanese informed archway, but not too appropriative. And there's, bonsai trees already, so we don't need to go any further down that rabbit hole. And also, I have, pretty strong values about a variety of things. One of which is about just trying to provide a space for other life forms besides myself to thrive and be happy. And so we have a lot of stuff that's aimed at pollinators, and that's a big part of what we do as well. And so I think, yeah, those are some overview thoughts of who I am as a person, and how I think the transition from the intensive vegetable thing over to more of the landscape thing was me accepting, like, this is causing me more stress than the benefit coming out of it.
Gotcha.
And so let's do this. And now it's, instead of it being like, oh my God, this is a painful place to go and look and see at all the things that need to be done. And instead it's like, oh, look, this is blooming now. Look at this. These things are happening, and there's just a little bit more.
When you're in a park, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh no, I was just saying that's why I love, and maybe Alexis can relate to this. I love that separation I have of garden production with that versus like my flower beds at home, and just like, we're just gonna plant tons of sunflowers and enjoy them. We're just gonna plant for butterflies and bees and gonna love it.
Yeah.
For the heck of it, right? And so it's so nice to have that like refuge, like you
creative outlet
too. Yeah.
I always want spaces like that to be kind of relaxing, and that's a spot. And we've kind of protected that. We have lots of trees down back, and really, I just consider what little activities we do down there and a little patch of sun, flowers, a few vegetables, this, that, and the other, it's just enhanced that the tree line that's along the creek. And that's my favorite feature, is the shade by the tree line. So it's really just enhancing and working with what's there. I grew up kind of in the foothills of the eastern part of the state, and that's my biggest influences. Brett said, almost like a retreat or refuge. That's the way I see my natural spaces, is that number one, unless it has to be for food production, which in this case it doesn't. I look for that area that's sort of natural, and you can observe kind of natural cycles and things kind of taking place. But yeah.
And it is absolutely remarkable how much plants soften and enhance, and they bring both like noise and quiet to a space.
Right.
And even like affect the, like, when just having plants that are growing, and some of them, lower down, it, compared to when we had sort of almost like bare ground vegetable beds, it feels like 20 degrees cooler just visually looking and seeing plants instead of just exposed soil or mulch or whatever, plastic mulch or whatever. It just feels palpably different because there's these established anchor plants in the landscape, and they're kind of they've put on some mass now, and they're getting there. And then all the annuals and stuff we fill in with in between. Yeah.
I'll remind people, if you are in a production, if you're listening and you're saying, well, that's all great, and I do have my areas, but that doesn't make my production area any less stressful when I walk out. Reminder: silage tarps are magical. If you don't know what a silage tarp is, even if you're a home gardener, they can be great. They can be big black tarps, and you throw it over your problem areas, and they just disappear. Okay. Now,
That
granted,
says a lot maybe about your personality.
You need to look at your, this is an opportunity to look at your systems. Do you need to take on less moving forward so that you can manage things better, blah, blah, blah. But also, it makes you feel a lot better to not see those really weedy areas or problem areas. And, I know black tarps are not the most beautiful thing to look at, but it is way better than feeling bad about myself about all the Johnson grass that grew up because it hadn't stopped raining in 2 months. So I just wanted to share that with some people. It's a blank slate and you just pull it off when you're ready. No harm, no foul.
Well, and I also think too, like in your all's case, where the production system and the growing space is part of a economic consideration, and it's not your retreat might be different from my retreat. It could be that you look to get some houseplants for your living room, or you look to maybe create a little space, where you can sit and read and hang out, or just like I think just those for me, those the way that the built environment, in part in my case of a garden, affects your mood is pretty wild. All the architects and landscape architects are like, yes, our whole thing, it's sort of our thing. But it has a huge effect. And
it does.
If you are thinking about putting out a garden and you're, that you're the type of person who tends to go overboard, well, maybe know that about yourself and pull back and don't quite go overboard, because then you don't want it to be a stressful experience. Or I don't know. I think this is interesting, and it's
also okay to just lay in the grass. Does anybody else just do that sometimes? You just kind of lay there and look at the clouds
all the time.
I don't need it to be anywhere in particular. Sometimes I'm just like, I need to now, and I just feel the earth.
Totally been doing
we
that.
have public spaces like parks and that you can go to and enjoy, that you don't have to have.
Horticulture is everything. That's what Brett said once, and I'm rolling with it. Sometimes you just need to lay in the grass. Okay.
Yeah.
Watch
ground yourself. Take your shoes off. Don't walk through any white clover, but
right. As you started this podcast, we all need to drink some water and go sit out in the sun, just like little plants. And that's what you need sometimes. Just even on these still kind of cooler days, it's getting ready to warm up, but the sun is out. I have totally been going out there. I mean, I'm photosynthesizing right now.
Yeah, I saw a video of some girl. She said, "I'm gonna go sunflower," and I was like, "What?" And she walked outside and she just stood there and tilted her head back and looked at the sun. And because sunflowers, they say always follow the sun, even though but anyways, she goes in sunflower, and I just thought that was such a cute way of saying that. Just go sunflower. Go outside, get some sunshine.
I would listen to that Post Malone song while I do it too.
I know.
We started out all thorny. Now listen to us.
Now listen to us.
Yes. We were in this whole vibe. It felt like when we started out. Now we're in a much better space, thinking about all of the beautiful things that plants can do for us.
Yeah, I'm excited now. I've just been thinking the whole time. I'm like, I'm going to do this and this and this in the spring, and we're going to plant this.
I'm going to go plant some oxalis. I actually seeded clover in my lawn the other day. I was close.
So I'm in the middle of, this is, I would say March is kind of the peak of repotting season for bonsai and things that are in that trajectory. And so I'm getting to dig things up that I did things to last year, not get them out of a pot, that I did things to last year, and see the development of the roots below the surface. Because you don't really, the way I'm doing it, you don't really see it. And then every year you get to see this progress. And it's sort of this nice metaphor for a lot of things in our lives where we don't necessarily appreciate the progress that's kind of passively happening all the time. And it's important to have some sort of a check-in where you're able to say, okay. And to that end, I want to give a shout out to Alexis, who at the Extension Conference recently won the Outstanding Extension Specialist Award from our professional organization. It was, again, one of those, there's been so much happening and so many things going on. I wanted to take just a moment to pull her out of her pot, check her roots. Things look great. She's doing so much awesome stuff. And this podcast has just been a shot in the arm, I think, for me, as we've been doing it when she was an agent. And now as Jessica came on board, and of course, Ray and I have been here the whole time, though he is not bald. And
I'm working on
one bald boy.
Working on it.
but we are the brunette girls, so I do appreciate the flip of the switch here. So
there you go.
Bald boys to brunette
Bald,
girls.
blonde, and brunette. Yeah. We've got our own rock group, basically. But congratulations, Alexis.
Thanks, guys. I maybe have set the bar too high, but we're just gonna
boss girl too hard now. You have set the
I've girl boss too hard. No, it's okay. I really enjoy getting to help people, get to be on this podcast. Hopefully that's you all enjoyed listening to this one, something a little bit different, but hopefully, you can pull something away if you're looking to start a new garden or revamp one that you have to better fit maybe your personality style, or to embrace a part of your personality that you want to, improve or see more of. So I think those are all good things. And, when in doubt, throw a tarp over it and forget about it until next season. And that is, I'm going to tell you it's perfectly okay. So don't listen to anybody who tells you it's not, because you can trust me. I am an outstanding extension specialist here. So go drink some water.
If not you, then who?
And if not me, then who, right? Go drink some water, get some sunshine, follow us on Instagram at Hort Culture Podcast, leave us a review and tell us what kind of garden or style that you're going to try, new or, remedy or whatever it is you're into. We would love to hear. Feel free to also shoot us an email if you've got questions about, maybe tell me more about cottage gardens, Jessica. Maybe that's what you want to know. Feel free to reach out to us. But basically, just go drink some water about it. You'll feel better. I promise. Thanks for joining us, you guys. We'll talk to you next time.